Hi, Jonathan York, Bay Financial Partners, looking at the investment markets. Finally, one of the Magnificent Seven reported last week, Nvidia, and again, that was just a standout performance on their earnings. Another strong performer was Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, and that just continues to put runs on the board. So, overall, the earnings season has been pretty good from the US as they start to sort of wind down now. About 80% of the companies have sort of beaten the estimates. But more importantly as well, the guidance hasn't really been too negative going forward. Now, obviously, you've still got a pretty robust US economy, and it's just going to be very interesting now to see the sort of Fed's comments over the next sort of 2 to 3 months, because certainly inflation is still sort of a little bit sort of naggingly high and persistent, but it is clearly well off the highs from 12 months ago. And looking at it forward, projections are still for lower sort of inflation rates over this year. Now we'll get further confirmation of this later this week with the Fed's sort of preferred inflation gauge of personal consumption expenditure. And certainly at the moment, the Fed is still sort of looking for, maybe 3 cuts this year, starting around sort of June, July time. Now, rates in the US have just nudged slightly sort of higher. 10-year is 4.28, and the 2 years around 4.67. Now, on the political front, the Republican Party is really facing a bit of a quandary, really, because Donald Trump has won the latest primary in South Carolina. And that was Nikki Haley's home state as well. So, a bit of a crushing defeat for her in her home state. But then on the legal side, Donald Trump is currently on the hook for around $480 million. And that is accruing interest at a daily rate of around $87,000 per day. Now, the issue is that if he pays those fines, which is highly unlikely, he's more likely to appeal. Even if he does appeal, he still has to put up a bond or a substantial deposit to cover those fines. And that may just prove problematical because, despite his sort of, claims how much money he has, 480 million would put a big hole in his personal finances. And all the time the clock is ticking down to Super Tuesday. Now, oil has just nudged up slightly at 78.50 and change, still below that $80 a barrel though. Now, in the UK, the budget looks like it's going to be March the 6th, and that's going to be very interesting because, the UK economy is sort of, pushing along at a sort of zero level, if you like. Technically it is in recession at the end of last year. And the growth forecasts for this year are sort of, below 1%. And bearing in mind as well, the Tory government potentially has an election this year as well. They really need to give something back to the public to try and get re-elected. Now, the big news sort of in the EU region is that Sweden is now going to join NATO, finally. Now that's obviously a big move, but what hasn't helped is that comments coming out from some NATO countries about potentially putting troops on the ground in Ukraine. Now they have been strenuously denied by NATO, but obviously Russia and Putin has taken that to be sort of, that is basically a signal for all-out war. Though whether Russia is in any position to actually instigate a full-out military conflict with NATO is another question. And as that conflict drags into its third year now, it's just going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. Also, as well as we've still got the Gaza issue, potentially Biden has come out and sort of said he expects some sort of ceasefire this week. Both Israel and Hamas have come out and sort of said that seems unlikely and sort of denied those claims. But certainly there's quite a bit of work going on behind the scenes to try and get a ceasefire. Now, Australian earnings season hasn't been too bad so far. A couple of the banks have reported reasonable sort of earnings. And interesting as well, the Australian economy is the latest one to sort of benefit from the sort of Taylor Swift phenomenon. That's put in apparently about $120 million into their economy. That's over the space of a couple of weeks. Now here in New Zealand, all eyes will be on the Reserve Bank to see if they're going to tweak the OCR. Most economists and analysts expect them to leave rates unchanged because really it's hard to justify a further rate increase. Although there is one big, the Australian banks has come out and predicted that there will be 2 more hikes this year. Certainly the New Zealand economy, again, is pushing along at an okay sort of rate. It's been helped by a very good summer so far with good weather and good tourists. Migration is still running pretty high at around sort of 120,000 for the last 12 months. That obviously has implications for the housing market. But again, inflation is well off its highs over the last sort of 12 months and does appear to be on a downward path. And certainly these high rates are having some implications out there for the consumer spending. Retail sales were down in December, bearing in mind that's sort of a Christmas month and, sort of some pretty big sales as well. That's probably a disappointing number. So I expect the Reserve Bank to leave rates unchanged and really probably come out with some sort of comments, along the lines of sort of data dependent. And also as well, it'll be interesting to see what comes out in the budget in May as well. Now, just sort of interesting in terms of government funding, New Zealand bonds, 30-year, were issued last week. That was at a rate of 5.09. That's versus sort of UK, US and Australian bonds that come in around sort of 4.5. So New Zealand already having to pay, slightly higher interest rates to attract those buyers of those bonds. And that obviously means the interest rate payments are higher for the government as well. So if you are looking for income options, go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.